There is a big but here and a real caveat that introduces a lot more risk of potentially killing your queen. Now, the problem with that advice, and this is where people can get in a mess, you can't take the colony up to 40 kilograms until after that has happened. And you couldn't do any more damage to your bees at that time of the season. There are huge advantages when it comes to using poly beehives. Don't treat bees for 3 years and they are probably going to be dead. Onto something here, guys. We are seriously onto something here. Welcome to Let's Talk Bees, episode 80. Sign up to the newsletter, and the first question is from Chris, who says, "Good morning, Lawrence. I hope the heat wasn't too bad up there. We're going to try a 2-frame queen trap this year against Varroa. I was wondering, is there a danger of the new brood becoming honey bound?" So definitely yes. If you're going down the route of trapping the queen to force a brood break, which I think is a really, really good idea, then yes, that's going to be one of the risks that you will have, which is as you trap that queen and limit any laying or eliminate any laying, there's just going to be loads of space in the brood nest. Even in weather like this with the queen in there, they're filling it up, aren't they? But if you get weather like this or good weather with the queen trap, they will block it all out completely. So my recommendation to you would be, I don't know what your setup is, Chris. I know you'll have a very specific setup, but for people to think about that first, to not think, right, I'm going to trap my queen to force a brood break to tackle Varroa, and then kind of just go through that process and say, right, successful, the Varroa are now been eliminated, and I've just got another big problem on my hands, which is I've got loads of honey downstairs in the brood box. You can do it in various different ways. I'm not entirely sure, like I've not got a solution on the top of my head there, but I would just think about it. You will be forcing some form of honey-bound status in the brood nest, and maybe this could be a solution, which is you just say, okay, I'm going to get honey bound frames downstairs in the brood nest. Once I get that queen laying back again, I'm going to put a new brood box in. I'm going to take the honey bound brood box, put it underneath with the queen excluder in between, bruise all of the stores, and then hope that when the queen comes back into lay, the bees are not going to like that configuration where they have capped or bruised stores below the new brood nest that's going to be created, with the idea of pushing it up. So I think as long as you have some sort of strategy like that, Chris, you should be good. Michelle says, once I've demoed a hive, can I keep putting frames of cap brood from the bottom to the top as long as the queen stays in the bottom and the emerged frames back to the top? Yes, you can. It's called a rolling demoray, and it is more effective than a demoray split. But there is a big but here and a real caveat. I've been helping a couple of people just with a little bit of advanced beekeeping advice. And one of the things that we identified, and we don't know if this is what is causing the issues here, but it's just made me think about it in a slightly different way, is that a demoray split introduces quite a lot of movement. It introduces a lot of movement of frames. Not huge amounts, but more than not doing the demoray split. And that movement of frames, when beginners or amateur beekeepers are taking frames out and putting them back in, there is a risk of killing a queen. So all I would say with the rolling demoray is, yes, you can do that. Yes, it makes the demoray more effective, but also it's a lot more work and it introduces a lot more risk of potentially killing your queen. Taking cap frames from the bottom box and lifting them up to the top. The bottom box is much, much less packed with bees, so you should be okay and fine for experienced beekeepers, and I'm sure you're experienced enough, Michelle. But for everybody else, I would say, although you get a slightly small amount of benefit by doing the rolling demoray, I don't think for a lot of people it's worth the risk. Julia Pollard says, good morning, Lawrence. In kilograms, what would you recommend would be a healthy, unhealthy weight for a brood box going into winter? I have polynational hives, first year beekeeping. What people think, let's say the honey season's over and you've treated your bees for Varroa. So let's get our bees up to weight. And if I said to you, it's 40 kilograms is the figure that I use. I lift up my beehives, my polynational beehives. Once they're at 40 kilograms, they're good to go for winter. Now, the problem with that advice, and this is where people can get in a mess, is that what time does it need to be at 40 kilograms? A lot of people get that wrong. They take the honey off, they treat their bees for Varroa. It's the middle of August, early September, and they say, right, I need to get up to 40 kilograms. So I'm going to pump the bees full of feed. And you couldn't do any more damage to your bees at that time of the season. The 40 kilogram rule is for the final weight going into winter. That's when I'm taking my apiary strips out. I take them out probably middle of October, and at that point, they need to be 40 kilograms, there or thereabout. I don't worry if they're 38 or 42, but something around that. The risk of feeding early, back end of August, early September, they take the feed down. People will probably feed the wrong feed at that time of the year. They'll probably go in and feed 2-to-1, where really 1-to-1 is what they want, and 1-to-1 is what you should give them because it's cheaper for you. Give them a good period of Varroa treatment to make sure that you're comfortable with them going into the second Varroa treatment on the brood break in the winter. Feed them 1-to-1 syrup and keep on just trickle feeding them 1-to-1 syrup all the way from when you take the honey off, so maybe 1st of August. I'm talking 8 weeks here, 6 to 8 weeks, where you're just going to be going back in. If they need a bit of syrup, you're going to be giving it to them. 1 or 2 litres, not that much. There's stuff out there. They're still going to be going out and foraging. You might go on to double brood at this time, and they might be building a really nice buffer, so you might not need to feed that much. So it doesn't matter if there's any brood there now. The problem that you've got previously doing it the other way is you block out the brood nest. But as soon as the winter bees are there, they're in brood form. You can't actually overfeed the colony. This is when you need to go in heavy. The winter bees are produced, go to 2-to-1 feed them as much as they'll take and get them up to the 40 kilograms. And ticking all of those things together, you will end up with very healthy bees. Not only healthy bees, but bees that weigh the correct amount and bees that have the correct amount of winter bees to get them through. Sniggy says, what do people think about EPS hives over wood? Good or bad? So there's the obvious disadvantages when it comes to EPS, which is expanded polystyrene. The disadvantages are, obviously, it's petroleum based and adding plastic into the environment. But I think that's about it in terms of kind of like the disadvantages. There are huge advantages when it comes to using poly bee hives. A few things you need to do though, you need to paint them. You need to make sure they're painted well. The difference between like well painted and poorly painted or not painted EPS over a few years is dramatic. The UV gets in and it degrades like nothing else. Whereas if you paint it with a proper like exterior grade masonry paint, it will protect it. And instead of having a 5-year lifespan, you can have a 35-year lifespan. It's a massive, massive difference. So get your paint on if you've got any sort of poly hives. Pure Coastal Honey says, hello from Australia again from Jamie. How do you go managing Varroa without synthetics? We don't have brood breaks. Without brood breaks, you don't have the brood breaks, so all you're gonna have to just force those brood breaks. You see it in other places in the world where they force a brood break 3 or 4 times a year, and then they'll go in with some sort of oxalic acid towel-based solution, and they're using whatever the product is, the licensed product, and dipping the J-cloth towels in the solution, folding it over the top bars, and you have numerous ones across the top bars once you've forced the brood break. The idea being that the bees transfer the oxalic acid around and it kills all the phoretic mites once you've forced that brood break, so there's no place for the mites to hide within the brood. That's probably the route that I would go down. It's not synthetic and it fixes the non-brood break issue. Also though, take a look at the Sublimot. If you want, the Instant Vat is going to be the handheld one that I use. Sublimot to do exactly the same job. Blocks up a little bit more, I find. And then you can sublimate and then you've not got to use the towels as well. But that's what I would go down. Darren says, morning Lawrence, that nuke you gave me early April has finally covered both sides of every frame on the second super. None capped yet, but every frame is heavy. Is it too late to demerate or just super? The demerate system here is perfectly timed. Like you've got a nuke there. It's filled the brood box. It's now filled 2 supers. Nothing's capped, but you've got a brood box and 2 supers full. You're perfectly primed for a demerate. You're in perfect conditions for a demerate. A good thing to add on there, I nearly took my hat. Do not do a demerate if you see any signs of swarm preps. None at all. They have to be not preparing to swarm and then go ahead and do it. So I would say do the demerate now, get yourself up to 4 supers, and that's probably going to be it for the year. So you've got your brood box with all the queen in, you've got your supers there, and you've got your top box that's full of honey. Just take all of the supers away and leave them with the bottom brood box and the top box full of honey, and you're fixed for winter. Matopka says, my friend has a lot of hives where there are apple trees, but due to pesticides or chemicals, his bees are dying and vomiting near the hive. Do you have any solutions? Take them away from the pesticides or chemicals. It's really sad. Apple trees are one of the worst for it as well, because the nectar is relatively poor, so the bees don't want to go there. And you'll see like they not only spray the trees, but they cut away everything on the floor as well. So if there's nice wildflowers or dandelions and stuff on the floor, they cut all of them away and they spray the trees with stuff, force the bees onto them. I'm not a fan of that. I would take the bees away and let the bees just freestyle somewhere. No type of honey is worth that, in my opinion. Sam Bennett says, good morning, Lawrence. I caught a swarm in my garden 2 days ago in an empty hive. I was too busy to move it immediately. Do I need to take it 3 miles away now to move it back to my apiary? Normally, the 3-foot or 3 mile rule is this. If you want to move a colony, you can move it up to 3 feet in any direction. If you move it any more than that, you have to take it 3 miles away, or else the bees get confused and they don't know where the beehive is. However, if that beehive swarms and throws out a swarm and it lands just somewhere in the apiary, in an empty hive, anywhere in the apiary, in fact, they automatically reorientate to that spot if they stay put. So if they're still there, that's it. You're all good. You can just leave them there and get on with it. It's a really nice one to know, that one, because it saves you quite a lot of work moving bees around. Using that one to great effect. Sam, well done. Jean says, I tried to do a split and it didn't turn out well. Placed the queen in a brood box with resources on bees, with the other split brood and no queen. One swarmed and one died. Oh, one swarmed and one died. Unfortunately, Jean, means that it's unbalanced. So the one that swarmed probably had too many bees in there and the split didn't come early enough, or all the bees went back to that one. And then the one that died is because all of the bees went back to the other one and left probably all of the brood there. Safest way, if you can possibly do it, package them up when you make the splits and take it to a new apiary 3 miles away using the 3 foot or 3 mile rule. It perfectly balances the bees. Say you've got a colony of bees, it's got 20,000 bees inside the colony, and you make a split, 10,000 in one, 10,000 in the other. If you take one of those 10,000 beehives and take it to another apiary, then it's all good. You will remain at 10,000 in one and 10,000 in the other. If you make that split in the same apiary, you're probably going to end up with like 16,000 in one, 4,000 in the other, possibly 20,000 in one and 0 in the other. Now, the way to make sure that you keep some bees in the other one is to make sure that there is sufficient brood in there. Looking for much more like capped brood is what you want in that one, because it means it doesn't need quite as many bees to keep it warm, but the bees will stick around for it. So you've got double brood like that. Bottom box is full of brood, top box is full of honey. And you say, right, I'm going to make a split, and you do that. That one's going to die. No bees are hanging around for a box that's just full of empty honey or full of honey. They'll just get robbed out. They'll all stick over here. So you need to balance the bees and you need to balance the brood. James says, morning Lawrence, hope all is okay with you and family. Really quick question. Have seen a couple of people talking about putting stinging nettles in their smoker to help with varroa. Do you have any thoughts on this? Here we go. I'll give you the example. This is my coffee, yeah? I'm going to put my finger in my coffee, and it's got a special power. It means when you put your finger in your coffee, your eyes stay open. And so there's only one conclusion that I can make here. Putting my finger in the coffee means that my eyes stay open. Caffeine. That was a terrible example, but you get the idea, yeah? It's the same with a smoker. I'm gonna put some nettles in my smoker, put them in because it's gonna help with varroa. Someone comes up with a great idea. Puff, 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 puff. The bees are not dead, everyone. The bees are not dead. Right, let's go to the next winter. Right, we've not done any treatment. All we've done now is we've just puffed our bees with stinging nettles. Did the bees get through to next winter? Yeah, they did. And it's at this point people say, onto something here, guys. We are seriously onto something here. They go around second year, all their mates doing the same thing, and they say, the bees are not dead. Yeah, we found this revolutionary treatment for varroa. It's called stinging nettles in the smoker. Look, it works. Yeah. Third year, yeah, which is when all of the colonies die because of varroa. That's just like standard cycle. The people who have been puffing their bees, yeah, with stinging nettles, saying this is the best treatment, they say, my bees died. Yeah, they died. It was the cold and the damp that got them. I was treating them for varroa with the stinging nettles. It definitely wasn't that. We proved that in the previous 2 years. It was the cold and the damp that got them. And anybody that knows bees is like, they die from PMS. They die from the impact of the mites, like the parasitic mite syndrome, nearly forgot it, as a result of that prolonged exposure to the viruses over many years. So the stinging nettles in the smoker has done nothing here. What you have effectively demonstrated is that the standard approach applies, which is don't treat bees for 3 years and they are probably going to be dead. My thoughts on it are as clear as that, James. I think it's a load of nonsense, but I welcome people trying new things and like actually going through like a study, because if stinging nettles in the smoker was really, really useful, there'd be some sort of study that would go with that. Someone would capitalize on it, no doubt, and have some sort of paid product for it. I don't think it's true.